Hello, welcome to The Wandering Drew. I am Drew. On today's episode, I'll be discussing planning a first hike. Before I get started, once again, this video is geared more toward the beginner hiker than the more experienced hiker, but I hope people of all different skill levels will get something out of it. And secondly, what I'm presenting here is more guidelines. They're not rules. There's a saying in hiking, hike your own hike. And to me, that means you do what works for you and I do what works for me. And as long as what you're doing doesn't infringe upon my ability to enjoy my hike and the trail, it's your decision to manage your hike. So hike your own hike means do what works for you. And you know what? Other people shouldn't really care. If it's safety-wise, we can offer advice, but in the end, it's your decision to make. In planning your first hike, one of the most important factors for you to consider is your fitness level and your skill level, and that of all the people that you're going to be going with if you go with a group. And I'm going to strongly urge you on your first hike to go with at least a partner, if not a group. So at least one other person, if not 2 or 3 or 4. The reason why I'm going to urge you to go with a group is for safety and enjoyment. Safety obviously being paramount, where if something happens to you, you trip and fall, you hurt yourself in some way, it's good to have someone else there that can render assistance or go get help for you if you're unable to walk out on your own. And enjoyment, because going with another person generally makes travel and everything, sharing an experience with someone, generally makes it more enjoyable, as long as that person is enjoying themselves as well. It is about the trip you're taking, not just the finish. So it's not a race. So take into account your fellow hikers that are going with you. You're going to look at trails and you're going to see they have a difficulty rating. And one of the things that is good about this difficulty rating is that you can use it to know how hard or challenging a trail is immediately by looking at that rating. The problem is that some of these ratings are not standardized and it depends on who's giving it that rating. If it's a trail club or a entity from the government, or it could be a state government, it could be the federal government, the Park Service, things like that, then more likely it's probably pretty accurate. However, if it's from a person, an individual that posts a rating or their opinion of the trail, you can't count on them as reliable because you don't know what that person's ability is. If a person is an experienced hiker, a trail for them might seem not too difficult and they might post it as being intermediate or easy. And yet for you that is an unexperienced hiker, or for someone that's not in as good shape as them, that might be a very challenging trail. So I tend to discount people's ratings of a trail if I don't have any context with that. Usually, no matter what scale people are using, easy is still easy. And that's the trails you're going to be looking for, a trail that's marked easy. The reason why is just like going with a group, it increases your enjoyment and it allows you to succeed and complete your hike. And being successful and finishing your hike increases the chance that you'll go hiking again because you had a positive experience. Some of the factors that go into making that rating are obviously the type of trail, or the terrain. Is it mountainous? Is it rock? Is it slippery? Do you have to climb over rocks? Do you have to cross water or rivers or streams? Those would all increase the rating. One of the factors that primarily sets the difficulty is the change in elevation. And that's how much the terrain goes either up or down along this trail. So if you're going up, gaining altitude, it's going to obviously be a more challenging hike. If you're coming down in altitude, going down a mountain or a slope, it's going to be harder for you too. You have to engage more of your body. You have to stop yourself from gravity and momentum pulling you down. And a lot of people find down actually harder on their body physically than the up, especially on your knees, your ankles, those things. generally feel the downs more than they do the ups. And the type of terrain that the trail is made out of. Is it dirt? Is it mud? Does it have a stream or river that you may need to cross or climb over? There are other slippery rocks. Are there places that you need to scramble over or climb over? Those all make it more difficult. Obviously, the terrain, if it's mountainous and rocky and it's up a slope, that's going to be a harder trail to do. And of course, the difficulty of the trail will go up. And a good rule of thumb that I like to use is taking a look at the elevation profile, which is a map, like a cutaway view, and I'll insert one into this video, of the trail that shows the elevation. So it shows when you go up and when you go down as you go along. One of the things I like to do, and I just do a little mental math, is I take a look at elevation profile and I usually look at how far I'm going or a snapshot of the distance that I'm going to hike, and I break it down into feet per mile. So for instance, if I'm going to go on a trail and I'm going to start at 1,000 feet and I'm going to end at 2,000 feet and it's 4 miles long, it's a 1,000 foot elevation gain in 4 miles. If I break that down per mile, I'm going up 250 feet in elevation every mile. That's a nice slope. It's like going up a steep ramp, but it's not undoable for most people. And if you're having trouble with that, you can always slow your pace down. Once you start getting over about 200, 250, you generally get into more harder trails. And if I'm usually seeing something about 500, 600 feet per mile, I know that's pretty challenging. That's a nice slope. And I know that's going to be harder for me to do. And it's going to slow me down generally. That's just a little thing I do mentally, so I kind of know what to expect from the couple of miles in front of me, how steep it is. And it's just something easy you can do. It's quick and dirty math, nothing precise, but it lets you know what you're up against. One of the things that I always touch upon, and I don't know if I have already, but I'm sure I will again, is you don't need to do the whole trail. If a trail is a 10-mile trail, you don't need to hike all 10 miles. You can easily decide that you're going to walk for your first hike 2 miles in, maybe stop, take a break, turn around and come back to where you started. And that's a good 4-mile hike. That's easily an hour and a half. And that's a good first hike. And what you can use, a longer trail like that, can then be used for subsequent hikes. So you can take the next time you go out, you can go to the same exact trail and you'll have a little comfort because you've already been there, but you're still going to see new territory that you don't have any familiarity with. So after the first 2 miles, maybe you do another mile or two, and let's say you did 2 miles extra. So you did 4 miles in, you turned around and came out. That's an 8-mile hike. You just doubled your distance. That's pretty good. And if you only did an extra mile and came back out at 6 miles, that would be a good second hike too. The reason for limiting your mileage when you first start out is you're getting your equipment, your body, used to doing this activity. If it's a new activity, your body's not used to it, and neither is your equipment. You're not sure how your feet are going to feel after walking on a trail. You're not sure how your shoes are going to feel. And if you have a backpack or something like that, you're not sure how your back and your arms are going to feel. So by limiting the distance, you reduce the chance of being fatigued and injury. And you get to break down and test your equipment without going a really far trip. If you decide to do, and you probably are capable, and most people are, of walking 8 or 10 miles on their first time, but how are you going to feel a day or two later? And if you hurt yourself or strain something, then you're not going to be able to hike longer. You have to wait for it to heal. But imagine walking, you decided to do a 10-mile first hike, and you're 4 or 5 miles into the hike, and you realize you're getting blisters. Now you have to walk out a whole 5 more miles. That's not going to be a pleasant experience for you if you're just starting out and you haven't planned properly. But with 2 miles in and then maybe 2 miles out, it's much easier for you to manage that. For your first hike, I suggest you go to someplace close to home. You don't want to spend more time traveling than you are doing your hike. It should be easily accessible, meaning you really don't have to risk getting your vehicle stuck to get there. It may be on a dirt road or a path or a Forest Service road, but you can easily get to it. Hopefully there's a parking lot there for you to leave your car. Hopefully there's a facility like a bathroom. That's something that people don't usually think about, but a lot of people when they're first starting out will have some apprehension with going to the bathroom in the woods. So you might want to look for something that has a restroom either close by, like at a ranger station or a visitor center, or at the trailhead, or even on the trail sometimes. You might find a porta potty or a latrine. So that's something to think about. It should be well established and marked. So it should have blazes, which are paint strips that look about the size of a dollar bill, and they usually come in various colors depending on the trail, and that tells you what trail you're on. The video, I'll put a blaze into the video so you can see what a blaze looks like, as well as signage. Sometimes there's signs denoting mileage or distance or directions, or which trail you're on. So anything that makes it easy to navigate. You do not need to learn how to use a compass and a map or orienteering. You should be able to follow a trail fairly simple. And the trail should be well traveled, meaning that other people are using this trail frequently or often enough that it's going to be maintained well. There's not going to be trees knocked down from a storm and nobody knows about it. Nobody comes out and cleans it up. Additionally, other hikers will be there. So if you run into trouble or you have questions or just need a little assistance, someone else will be there. The seasons will denote several things. One of those things will be how much time you have to hike the trail. Is it during the summer and you have somewhere between 12 to 14 hours of daylight? Or is it during the winter when there might only be 6 to 8 hours of daylight? And that's going to change your timetable and your availability to hike the trail. It also might affect how many people are out there. It's also going to affect the trail conditions themselves. Some trails get very muddy when there's ice and snow melting, or during the rainy season, like in the spring. So those are things you may want to consider. It might be not a good time to hike a certain trail. Other times might be better depending on where it's at. The seasons will denote some of the issues you may have with wildlife and bugs. So one of the things about bugs that I worry about or generally have concern about are obviously ticks are always a problem, but they're more active during the warmer weather. Mosquitoes obviously come to mind. That's a big one. Snakes and bears are the ones that I usually worry about. Most bears are pretty skittish and will run away. I usually don't see them except for their backside as they're running. More often than not, you hear them as they lumber through the woods, crashing branches to get away from you. Snakes will frequently be out on the trail, though. They may cross paths with you. If it gets to be cooler weather, they'll be actually out on the path trying to warm up by basking in the sun. And it's quite easy, if you're not paying attention, to nearly come across them or step on them. So it's something you want to be aware of. But other than that, most animals are pretty skittish when it comes to people. The seasons will also denote the temperature and weather you're going to encounter. So if it's the summer or late spring, you have hotter temperatures, you have more humidity, you need to plan for that. If it's other times of the year, you might have cold, you could have ice, snow, rain, depending on the time of year. So all those things you have to take into account. And if it's that season, that's a rainy season, what are the trail conditions going to be? Is it going to be a slippery, muddy trail, or is it going to be drained and dry? Plan for the sun itself and the wind, especially the sun. Most people, when it's summer, they know and plan for sun and using sunscreen. But if you're in the woods sometimes, because you have the tree canopy above you, you really don't have a lot of sun shining on you. You're in the tunnel of green, as they say. But during the winter, when the leaves all fall off, surprisingly, there's no tree canopy. So the views are in a way better, even if the weather's not for certain people, but you have that exposure to the sun that you probably don't plan for. So just because it's winter doesn't mean you don't need to plan for sun. So now we've discussed a lot of factors here, and these should all be things you're thinking about as you begin looking for a trail to do your first hike or two as a new hiker. And all the things we discussed may not apply to you, and not every trail will check all the boxes, so to say, but they're good to keep in mind. Most people do a lot of these things without really thinking about it, but sometimes it's good to have a checklist or a list of things I'm looking for when I'm going on a hike. But for most people, this will just be kind of intuitive, and they'll keep it in the back of their mind as they're looking at trails. Especially once you've done a hike or two, you generally know what you're looking for and what your ability is and your skill level. So that's going to be the biggest factor. Go out there and enjoy yourself. Have a good time, but you want to pick a trail that you're going to do and is going to leave a positive impression on you and your partner's minds when you go hiking, whoever's in the group. And hopefully they'll all want to go again. And then you'll have a little, steady hiking group. And you can pick and choose which trails you want to go on from there and increase your knowledge and experience. Next week, I'm going to discuss the planning process and putting some of these factors into practice and actually selecting a trail to do your first hike on. I will also cover some resources to do that research and where can you find out about trails in your area. I'd like to thank you for watching this video. If you like what I'm doing or you have a comment, please leave it below, positive or negative. And if you're so inclined, please subscribe to the channel. Till we meet again.